The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ryan McAfee, Associate Director for the Production Workflow Services at InfoTrends. I'd like to say welcome to everyone and thanks for joining, taking the time out of your busy day. Because we've had a lot of questions come in already about this. The session is being recorded, and we will provide a link to everyone of the attendees at a later point, either today or tomorrow. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Pat McGrew. So take it away.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. Ryan, why don't you flip over so they can see our beautiful faces on the next slide. So my name is Pat McGrew, and I'm the Director of the Production Workflow Advisory Service here at InfoTrends. And as Ryan said, Ryan and I are colleagues. We are he hates when I say this, but we're the Workflow Power Rangers. And here is all our contact information. So when you get your link to the slide, you'll have this if you don't have it already. We try to be as accessible as we possibly can, so feel free to tweet at us, message us on LinkedIn, or drop us an email. Our email addresses will be available at the end of the webinar as well. So let us tell you a little bit about some changes here at InfoTrends. We are now going to be known as a new company called Keypoint Intelligence, but what this means is that we're bringing together the InfoTrends brand that you know and love, all the market research and the consulting and the customer engagement services we've been helping all of you with for many years, and we've married over to the folks at Byers Laboratories, who are based in New Jersey, also in the UK. They have labs around the world. They've been known in the market for a very long time for providing competitive intelligence and product testing in the office space, in the office equipment space. And now with these two teams coming together, it means that we'll be able to provide some cross services. We hope to be able to introduce product testing to the core InfoTrends group of people, and bring more market research and strategic consulting to the group of customers that we've been serving as Byers Laboratories. So ta-da! Please meet us now as Keypoint Intelligence. This is our new website, and so if you come through to the websites that you've known and loved for years, this is what you'll see now. We invite you to please watch the video when you get a moment. It's very short, but it does give you an idea of the synergy that we think happened when Byers Lab and InfoTrends came together as a single team. We are very excited about the change, but we are not quite all there with all of our marketing collateral, which is sad but true. So it'll take us a little while to get our templates up to date and get our new business cards. You can continue to use our InfoTrends addresses. Those will continue to work for some time to come. But then you'll also be able to reach us at our normal name at keypointintelligence.com. So please, when you get a moment, go and explore the website and see all the cool things that we now can offer as a big joint new company. So with that, let us dive into what we're really talking about in this webinar. And what we wanted to do is bring you a roadmap of our plan for all of 2017. This is an important step that we take at the beginning of every year so that you know what to expect over the course of the year in terms of the publications and the reports and the forecasts and the kinds of research that we'll be focusing on. But remember, for all of the things that you see on this list, we're not exclusive. If there are points that you need to understand, if there's research that you'd like us to undertake, if there is consulting that we can help you with that are slightly outside the boxes of these topics, Ryan and I are here and we're ready to help. We have a number of interesting things going on right now that are continuing to help us expand our knowledge and our understanding of some of the more granular facets of the production workflow market. But for this year, expect to see us produce a number of reports that we think will be useful to you. All those of you who are subscribers to our service, of course, you'll be able to get these as part of the service offering. And you know, implications of online design tools, digital publishing, you can see the list. It's expanding out beyond the core commercial and transactional production workflows. We're expanding out into packaging workflows and textile workflows, because we're finding that a lot of the companies we're talking to, and certainly most of the vendors that we're talking to, see these areas as huge new digital opportunities, and we believe that that's actually accurate. You'll notice that in our forecast mix, which we're actually starting to work on pretty much now, you'll see that we've altered a little bit the number, or not quite the number, but the segments that we're covering, and a couple of things that you'll see that are different. We've added color management as a dedicated area to cover. We're also going to be looking at digital publishing solutions, things like Blue Code and Creative Space and products like that, because we're getting a lot more inquiries about those, and it's really a growing area to drive print out over the web. And then we also have sort of expanded the way we're going to look at print-specific MIS and ERP systems. So over the course of our forecast period this year, we're going to be taking an expansive look, and we'll be reaching out to all of you for a little bit of help. So don't be surprised when you get the friendly phone call from Ryan or I asking for your help in trying to identify where your companies are in these market spaces. And then, of course, for research, we love to do our software investment outlook, because it gives us a pulse point that we can take a look at year on year. We have just finished the European Software Investment Outlook, and we're about to launch the U.S. Software Investment Outlook, so we'll have fresh numbers for you in those areas. We're also taking a look at web-to-print in Europe. We are considering doing one of our famous multi-client studies. We're looking in the packaging direction. We haven't come up with a specific topic yet. If any of you have something that you'd like to put in front of us as an idea for the kinds of things that would be helpful to you, please don't hesitate after the webinar to drop us a note and let us know what you're thinking. We're always open to those kinds of ideas. So let's take a look at 2016. Ryan,
Perfect. Thanks,
over to
Pat.
you.
So before we, take a look ahead at some of what we expect to be the major themes for 2017, we wanted to do a quick recap back and retrospective on 2016, because being a Drupa year, a lot of the trends that we saw come to market, some of the solutions and their core foundations and so forth that were established then, they'll really continue to carry on and reverberate on the industry for the next several years, and quite well into the next Drupa cycle 4 years from now. So with that said, one of the major software trends at Drupa that we saw was this concept of Industry 4.0. Now, that's all just a convenient way to describe smart manufacturing, using technologies like connected devices, robotics, IT infrastructure that enhances connectivity and data exchanges like cloud computing and so forth. And at its core, it really represents a move to data-driven manufacturing, where information is collected, hopefully throughout the entire print production process. We see it mostly really happening at the machine level at this point. And then it can be used, all that information and data can be aggregated and used to basically improve and better the operational decisions that you make in terms of running your print operation and your manufacturing. So a few companies introduced cloud-based software to collect that machine data that I was mentioning at Drupa. And once collected, the value to the printers is that they can monitor their own performance within their shop. But more importantly, they can typically receive kind of an anonymous view or benchmark, as it's often called, that they have in relation to others with similar equipment, similar kind of operations. So that's one of the key things that we think will, all of this technology underlying will continue to happen for the foreseeable future. And we actually, one of our trends that kind of is a more granular point to that we'll get to in just a moment. The other thing that happens is that basically print is going high-tech, especially more high-touch print or high-value print, as it were. So no one really doubts the disruption that the internet has had on communications, and with that the printing industry as a whole. But what's often overlooked is how it is also empowering the industry for those willing to kind of exploit its strengths. So the internet gives us the ability to connect people, processes, and technologies like we really have never been able to do in the past. For example, it allows a designer to be thousands of miles away from any kind of production necessarily or bureau, and yet they can collaborate, mark up, and approve a packaging design all through the internet. It's also a backbone for all those things that we just touched on that related to cloud computing. And it's even changing the way that we can sell products online too, even dimensional products that need to be seen in 3D, and we'll talk about that a little bit more too. Then there's the app-ification, as we're calling it, of production workflows. And it really started, the roots of that started this past year. We hear a lot more vendors talking about their software, referring to it as a platform. Now, I have to caution you here, though. The term has been used loosely so far, and often, in many cases, it refers to just a collection of independent products instead of having kind of that uniform framework behind each one. But what it's really going to have an impact on is that it should allow a more seamless partner ecosystem, because they're basically opening up application programming interfaces or APIs to enable third parties to participate in the framework that's built around the workflow. And that even could lead to eventually opening the doors to customers, the actual print search starters and so forth, creating their own apps and basically tweaks to improve the workflows that everybody can participate in. So that's some
Ryan,
of the key. Yep.
Ryan, one of the things, we might actually mention what some of those things are, because we've sort of adopted this term app-ification of production workflows, and we kind of know what we mean, but it might help if we point out who some of the key players in that framework approach are.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So one of the kind of best examples of that in terms of the framework itself that we saw this past year with HP, or Hewlett-Packard, with its Print OS framework. And now that's a cloud-based workflow, but really the way that it is working as a framework instead of a collection of apps, so to speak, like I mentioned, was that there's a product that they basically inserted into the framework that was a third-party product that they are calling SiteFlow, which becomes kind of a workflow component for kind of a high-volume custom work, as it were. So that's one example, kind of in a different approach to it. You also saw InFocus. Now, they actually introduced this, I believe, at the end of 2015, but InFocus introduced its App Store. So very much like an app store that Apple would have, or the ones that we're familiar with on the consumer side, is that you can literally go onto the website, see what kind of individual apps that they have, and these usually are like single function kind of things. So, you know, it might be the ability to integrate a web transfer, like something like WeTransfer, with InFocus's Switch workflow product. So that's another example of this appification that we're seeing take place, and we expect to continue.
And then we heard from EFI last week when we were at EFI Connect that they're introducing this concept of the workbench, which to my eyes looked very similar to this idea of an app store approach, although they declined to call it that. So be aware that different vendors might call their approach different things. Some might call them apps and refer to it as an API-based enablement, where other vendors might choose to call it something else. But in general, what we're really talking about is this interesting change in the industry to this idea of building frameworks that become participatory in terms of the tools that might appear in them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of different labels being thrown around right now, but it comes down to this core concept of appification, as we're calling it.
Yeah.
So with that, Pat, let's go and talk a little bit about packaging from last year and what we saw.
Yeah, packaging got really interesting last year. I have to admit that as I have been living in this industry for a long time, packaging was not an area that I spent a lot of time looking at. But over the last 2 or 3 years, packaging has become the sexy thing to take a look at. And a lot of it happens because there are so many more options for packaging producers. Years ago, they would tell us that digital production wasn't possible because the color wasn't good enough, the range of things they could print on wasn't good enough, or the speed just wasn't there to meet production requirements. But two things happened over the last few years that have really caused digital production and packaging to intersect. One is that there's this rise in inkjet technology and inkjet devices that allows for the speeds and the color requirements and the substrate ranges to be hit. And there are certainly a whole lot of tools out there for adding variable and segmented kind of information to packaging and doing that in a seamless workflow. But one of the big things that happened is that the market to be served by this packaging has changed amazingly. So if you think about the things that you might buy online, you know, where I live in Colorado, I have a lot of dogs, and I'm one of those people who subscribes to something called BarkBox. And so I get a box every 6-8 weeks that's got toys for my dogs in it. And more that box is looking more and more personalized for me, because now they're able to do short-run corrugated boxes that actually allow them to customize the messaging on the box based on the kinds of dogs that they know they're serving with their BarkBox. It's not just for dogs. There are just a whole host of internet-based businesses that need packaging for the products that they're sending out. We've sort of gone past the point where people are dropping things in a padded envelope with a handwritten label on the outside. They're actually getting very sophisticated in what they're producing. So when you look at the need of the internet-driven market marrying up to the ability to produce digital packaging, corrugated packaging, folding carton packaging, flexible packaging, and then the labels that are associated with it, that intersection has really changed the way the market moves forward. Now, the other thing that has happened, we used to talk about augmented reality primarily in terms of direct mail marketing and maybe billboard marketing, and it really sort of ebbed and flowed in the market over the last few years. But the rise of augmented reality related to packaging, it really is something we're seeing growing both in the label and the folding carton space, although we've also seen it done in the corrugated space. So these pictures across the bottom will give you an idea. That image on the left, if you haven't seen one in person, this is a T1100S. It's a simplex inkjet device that is 110 inches wide. And this is a machine, that specific one is in place at Gelfi in Sondrio, Italy. And it is a fully production machine producing boxes. And in fact, the middle image is a set of boxes that they do for a client of theirs that have been designed to be stackable and be sort of a billboard for what that customer does. They're a fruit delivery company. And they were looking for a way to make the floor display more attractive than just brown boxes with a logo on it. And the team at Gelfi worked with the team at their food delivery client and came up with this design and executed it. And that is actually a production corrugated customized product that is done every week by the guys at Gelfi. On the right, this image from the Wheaties box, this is something that you're seeing a lot of the brands start to take a look at, is that way to, or actually continue to look at, the way to link the customer experience to additional online experiences. And certainly Wheaties has been a leader in that. So packaging is sexy.
Yeah, and in many ways, Pat, it's really, we're seeing a similar progression or path like we've seen with other digital disruption, where it kind of first starts on the hardware or equipment side so that you can actually produce the things. And then that forces the change to get more creative and more solutions and options on the software side to enable
it. Does. And on the packaging side, one of the things to remember is that a lot of the people who are targets for buying a digital production equipment, these are teams that typically they may not have a graphic arts group or even a pre-press group in plant, because traditionally they've been managing their their businesses using manufacturing execution systems and not what we think of as traditional print MIS systems. They may not have designers who are facile with something like an Adobe InDesign or a Quark or a Corel. They have mostly been focused on moving rolls of liner to a corrugation machine and getting it out the door, or rolls of paper to a device to print their folding carton and getting it out the door. And now these organizations are starting to either partner to get access to graphic design services and enablement services like augmented reality services, or they're growing it internally. And in the case of Delphi, they're actually growing those skills internally, and they've done a really nice job in what's really under a year to go from not really having a design department to having one that can produce work like this.
Mm-hmm. Very good example there. So let's get into what's ahead for this year. So as we look ahead, the important thing to mention here in terms of our service and what we kind of delivered that's different is that we're going to start with kind of the key trends that we see for this year for graphic communications, but we also introduced a completely separate roadmap for packaging-related software trends as well. So that's the first time that we've done this, so make sure that you take a look at both, particularly if the packaging is one of those areas that you're looking to expand into, which many of you are. So we'll start first with the graphic communication trends, and then we'll wrap it up with the packaging before we end today. So here are some of the key themes that we expect for 2017 on the graphic communication side. You'll notice that about half of these relate to a shift in how print actually gets produced. And the other half really relate to how print is changing in terms of how it's being sold as well, particularly in an online sense. So let's get right into some of these. So one of the top trends that we see for this coming year is really equipment manufacturers embracing the Internet of Things. Now this is really a very specific component to that big Industry 4.0 kind of umbrella that we talked about in the look back at 2016. And this specifically is about capturing that information from the actual equipment or machine and it being sent. I mean, it's like a big fire hose of information that's being sent up to the cloud, to where software will then look at it, analyze it, and provide it back to the end users in some kind of intuitive dashboard to where they can see what they need to see. And what it really is going to unlock for the printer is going to be that they can make data-driven decisions instead of, which way the wind blows today or kind of gut decisions. So it will really help them get insight into where their businesses have bottlenecks or where it's not profitable and so forth. It also eventually should allow them to get more accurate in their costing models, because right now there's usually a disconnect with either their print management system or their ERP system, whatever they may be using for kind of their business side, that it requires them kind of on maybe an annual basis, if they're really good diligent about it, to go back and refine that costing for the equipment and the kind of call centers that they have to produce the work that they do. Whereas now you have this data here, it could be used to refine that even and give them a much better indication of what's being going on in terms of times and material consumption and so forth through that equipment, because that data, again, is being collected. And then there's the benefit of kind of seeing how and where they fit amongst the peers or basically other operations that are similar to them. So it's that benchmarking, and then you can kind of get into some maybe gamification of things where you try and outperform the industry average, so to speak. So it can be really positive things for the actual printer. On the supplier vendor, yep.
Ryan, one other thing to point out, another thing that's really positive for is to identify where you have operations staff issues, right? So one of the things that these kinds of data dashboards can let you know is that maybe your third shift operator is outperforming all expectations, but maybe your second shift operator seems to have a much more reduced output than your other shifts. It helps you as a business owner keep an eye on things that maybe your other reporting processes aren't giving you an insight into. If you're only watching your total output, you might not be watching or getting access to that granularity that these kinds of systems can give you.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Pat. And actually, one of the other kind of things to that is that most of these kind of solutions that we've seen so far, and I expect that to continue, is that they offer kind of access from anywhere, right? So you can look at it through your mobile phone, even if you're away from the shop, so to speak. So that's an important
I think
aspect of it.
Yeah, the PrintBeat and the Rico Total Flow are two that I know have really nice mobile app interfaces that make it very easy for a business owner to identify where they are based on the pure data points.
Very good. Yep, you're exactly right. On the supplier side, it basically acts as kind of a R&D feedback loop. So in other words, as new equipment goes out or new placements go out, you can more easily monitor that in a remote sense again. And then as you scale out your placements and so forth, you could start to see if there's any kind of hiccups or kind of failure points within that equipment once there's some scale out there. And also allows you to kind of offer different services at the same point once you have this information. So a lot of the talk has been around, you know, having predictive or at least proactive maintenance, right? So that you can see when the next schedule for a service technician to go in to kind of maintenance the machine is, and you can actually send them out or at least notify the customer that it needs to be done and so forth, and get that going instead of a reactive sense that it's traditionally been. It also it can be kind of an indicator for professional services that you may be able to offer the print service provider as well. So just like Pat was mentioning, that it allows the actual, you know, shop floor production manager to see what differences there may be between operators between a second and a third shift, so to speak. You could also see those kind of trends analysis and say, well, you know, we can offer you some training to improve your actual operations on the personnel side. So it's all these kind of things that kind of new business models that you can piggyback off this information.
Yeah, and if you're looking to get an eye on some of these things, take a look at the Rico Total Flow, take a look at the HP PrintBeat, take a look at the Pitney Bowes Clarity product that uses the GE Predicts model. Everybody's looking to figure out how they can keep a print service provider from going down, and these three actually do a very nice job of it.
And there's probably, if memory serves, there's around 8 different providers at Drupa that were showing some flavor of this. And one thing I have to say about it is that it's really forcing the software developers to take a good look at how they present the user interface, right? Because it needs to be very simple so that people, instead of having tons and tons of information, they really get to the core of what's necessary to see. So it's kind of forcing that improved user interface too.
Yeah, death by data is never pretty.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably second or maybe just behind death by PowerPoint, right?
Yep.
So one of the second themes for the graphic communication side this year is going to be the app-based workflows really emerging and coming into their own. We mentioned the app-ification that we've seen in the industry in 2016. And what we expect to see from these is that there's already app-based software marketplaces out there in the consumer side and even in the B2B space. So we're all familiar because of our smartphones with the Apple and the Google kind of app stores. But Salesforce also has an app-based kind of software model as well for businesses. So the apps are simple, and they're, again, kind of designed to do that one thing. So think of it from a construct of a graphic communication. You have this base kind of framework, and you go to the App Store and you say, well, you know what, I need a good pre-flight checker. So I'll go get that app that does that. Or maybe I want to do variable data, or maybe even variable data just for the 3 months that I need to do it during the holiday season. So I'm going to go check that out and get that app and download it into my workflow. So they kind of work within that larger workflow context, and the benefits really for the print service provider will be flexibility and really a potential for a base level of integration. And that's really one of the things that's always been kind of a struggling point in the industry, because it always takes time and professional services usually to integrate any of these multiple kind of workflow tools together. So we expect that to improve as well with the app-based workflows here. Kind of out of order here, but I grouped them together because it's really talking about web to print or basically online ordering of printed products. So number 3 is that we really see 3 products coming online. And what that means is it's visualization software to really take a look on your screen at 3-dimensional products. So think of things like packaging or a t-shirt to where you can literally spin the product around after you've got a design on it and see what it's going to look like, or even maybe see it in context where you can see it on a person if it's a t-shirt, or you can see that poster that's at the bus stop. So there's a software that came to market, over the past 12 to 18 months or even longer than that. And there's a bunch of different examples that you see here. We think this will grow in importance for a couple reasons. Number 1, packaging and apparel textiles are growing segments of the business or industry. But also there's all this different capability that's coming out with the digital equipment with kind of like the 5th unit or CMYK plus kind of concepts, and we actually did a research study on that recently. And what it means is that how do you sell that kind of high print solution? So in other words, something that has a foil or an embossing or some kind of texture or security application. How do you sell that when the person can't see or touch it, and you need to sell it in an online kind of context, which we know
and
online.
The other thing is how to prevent returns, right?
Yeah,
because the other real advantage of these kinds of products is that somebody can actually see what they're going to get as opposed to sort of hoping that they're going to get what they want. And you should be able, by implementing a solution that includes one of these 3D visualizers, you should be able to reduce returns and actually speed approval process.
Yeah, that's a good point. The approval process too is a huge bottleneck that we see constantly in our research. So it'll help unlock those kind of applications too, not just the packaging and the apparel, but also think of just the high print kind of applications for regular paper-based work. On the other side, kind of again, an online kind of selling print in the online world is kind of web to print. We know the terminology, whether we think it's great or not, it's just kind of accepted. But it kind of ignores the many workflow steps that are in between, because there's very little, if any, work that goes from an online order directly to the print engine. There's some steps that have to happen in between that. And the printers actually know that they have to have, or at least once they get into kind of selling online, they realize quickly that they have to have very efficient workflows, way more efficient than they probably have had in the past to handle that higher number of smaller jobs that come through their storefronts. And what we've seen on the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say what we've seen in terms of bringing solutions to market is that vendors are also trying to bridge those gaps. So there's a couple of web-to-print vendors that are now, extending their software portfolios that they have to include also kind of a print management aspect, but also include a workflow. So Alliant comes to mind with their T-Flow and Procero and so forth. And also Canon took a look at this too with their Prisma Direct product to where it has multiple ways to get the orders into the system, but then doesn't ignore them after the fact, actually has the workflow back in to process those and get those out.
And so, Ryan, the other point that I would make here is that these workflows become critical because if you're selling web to print as a PSP, or if you're a vendor supporting your clients who are selling web to print, one of the things that they're going to need to do is find ways to differentiate their offerings. Otherwise it becomes a commodity business, and we all know in printing that we don't want to drive down to the lowest price. So one of the things that web-to-print systems need are these additional apps, if you will, that a print service provider can add into their workflow to add value to the print that they're producing. So it's not just this idea of having a visualizing tool that's part of the web-to-print approval process and design process for the customer, but it's also this idea that the web-to-print workflow And the web-to-workflow concept could include the value-added kinds of services. So think about adding geo-marketing services and adding maps and adding the kinds of maps that show you on a marketing piece how to walk from place to place, or on even putting maps on T-shirts that are down to your home address. So if you look at products, we like the guys at Locker, but we think they have a pretty cool tool. There are people who do these same things with Bing and with Google and Apple Maps, but at the end of the day, you need to be looking at building that overall web-to-workflow concept so that it can not only handle what you're doing today, but it will be easily expandable as you need to add more value to the offerings that you're making.
Yeah, it goes back to that, getting to the high print, selling high print online is kind of how we were wording it.
Yeah, exactly.
In this webinar, yeah. So with that said, we took a look last year at online print customization platforms, and we think they've been scaling. Some of the solutions that are out there have been scaling over the recent years. And we think they'll start to get to a point where they're impactful to the industry. So what are these things? The best way to describe it is that it connects print purchasers, basically the end person who would be buying it, and maybe also merchants. So think of any business that needs to sell a physical item. And they connect those people, those groups of people, to a network of kind of geographically dispersed fulfillers. And fulfillers in this sense we typically would think of or associate with print service providers, but it could be just a raw fulfiller in the end. So a way to kind of think of it, it's kind of like a version 2 or technologically up-to-date kind of look at the role that print buyers have played in the past. And the way these things technically work is that the technology platform usually offers some API again for the fulfillers to kind of plug into and automate the job intaking, the routing of that work to where it needs to be closest to where the actual print purchaser requested it. So think of it, and it kind of has a green aspect there. And then tools to kind of prepare the jobs and then automate the shipping of those products back out to the end customer. So as these things scale, and some examples of these are Gelato, InkRouter, Simpress Open, Picho, there's a handful of them. As these networks scale, they really will start to take an impact, we think, first on print brokers, because the internet, if it's taught us anything, is that it kind of cuts out middlemen, so to speak. And so we think it could definitely impact that and basically alleviate the need for print brokering to some extent. And then it will also, as they scale, could start to impact the online print market in terms of how the volumes of print are being ordered. If they're going through these networks, as they increase, they'll get more of the online print volume. And it also could start to impact the actual web-to-print software market. And so that if I'm a print service provider, and let's say I'm a small to mid-sized provider, instead of having to purchase a web-to-print software and then go through the challenge of implementing it, finding my customers, getting my customers onboarded, and so on, if I can leverage an existing technology stack and platform to kind of do that just to get print volume into my shop so that I can keep my equipment running and so forth and have the work that way, that might be a more viable and palatable alternative to those who haven't already adopted web-to-print. So it's kind of an easier way to get into it, as it were. I know, Pat, we looked at these a lot last year. Any other kind of things that stood out to you in terms of the
sorry,
customization
I was trying not to sneeze into the microphone. Sorry. So, one of the big things that I think every vendor ought to look at is, how are you working with these kinds of organizations and how are you helping enable them? Software providers ought to be looking at the opportunities to provide interesting kinds of plugins to these platforms, and the platform providers certainly, they all want to look for ways to expand the kinds of things that they can offer on their platform. If you're a print service provider and you're trying to understand, the ramifications of maybe expanding into packaging. If you want to understand the ramifications of expanding into areas of the market that have finishing that you don't have in your shop, these platforms can be an interesting marriage. When we were working on the study, Ryan, we were speaking to a commercial provider who is both using one of the platforms to fulfill things that they can't do themselves, but they're also participating in the network as a fulfiller for the things that they do best. And those kinds of two-way relationships with these online print customization platforms actually can expand the footprint for a local commercial printer to a global network capacity. And especially if you're a print service provider who has some sort of specialized finishing, that can really give you an interesting position in one of these platform communities.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, speaking with printers that were using them or either a part of the network, the kind of message was that you can find what works for your business, and they were quite pleased with it.
Yeah, and people seem to be making money with it. I know that was one of the questions when we first started working on our study and we were taking a look at these print customization platforms is, does anybody ever really make any money if they participate? And the answer seems to be yes. I think of all the ones that we talked to, I'd say most of them, maybe 85% of the platform people that we were talking to were extremely well established. They understood their network capabilities. They were looking for new opportunities, and they were actively growing. We did talk to a few that were maybe not being as successful, but to be honest, when whether they were being successful or not, the people who weren't being successful largely fell into a category of sort of print brokers who thought that they would be a print customization platform just because they knew a lot of printers. And that's not really the way these platforms are going to grow. You want to look for the customization platforms where there's a good, solid technological basis. They have a good group, they have a good, sound technology group that are behind it, as well as being smart marketers and understanding how to build the network.
Very, very fair points indeed. So rounding out the commercial arts, or graphic arts, I should say, the trends for this 2017, we have digital publishing. We expect that to really gain some traction in a business-to-business sense. I mean, it's been around and well established in terms of the book and magazine publishers that are out there as an extension of their core business. And what we think it is really going to be is it's a kind of a natural segue or an extension for print service providers who already offer their customers these brands, and it doesn't have to be really large brands, it could be any size, that offer these online marketing portals that kind of do asset management. So in other words, if I am a, like a John Deere, for instance, and I'm managing the collateral for John Deere across the country, and I have the dealer networks that are coming into the portal to order their material, it's a natural extension to go ahead and offer that in a digital format, because there's benefits to obviously doing that. Timeliness, the accessibility of it, the fact that it's current and up-to-date material, and so forth. And you already have the material existing anyway in the marketing portal. So it makes sense to make it available in these other kind of formats, whether that's through a computer, a tablet, or a smartphone.
Yeah, and I know there are a lot of people who are worried that the rise of digital publishing hurts the print business, but I think the smarter PSPs that we've seen who have already developed an ability to offer both in print and via mobile app or an online standing site, those companies are seen by their customers as being, a 360-degree company, somebody that can help them do all of their communications regardless of what the format of the output is. And the tools to make digital publishing happen almost seamlessly in that workflow environment, they've only gotten better every year. So it's not an area that PSPs, even small to mid-sized PSPs, should be afraid of.
Yeah, you're right. The software to actually execute it is not something that's very difficult to use in many cases. So that's not an obstacle. It's really more the mindset that you have to kind of get through to offering the digital capabilities.
The one thing I will tell you about digital publishing platforms, and it's something that vendors and PSPs alike should, when you're looking at working with customers who might want to go down this route, there's some education that goes into this, right? It's not that you can take any old legacy file and throw it at one of these digital publishing platforms and magically come out with a Kindle or an iBook or something that's really usable and pleasant to interact with. There are issues. So if you're moving in this direction, do a little bit of research, do a little bit of homework, and understand what kind of box to draw around the services that you want to provide. Because if somebody brings you an old transaction ASP document or an old Xerox Metacode or Interpress document, or even, to be honest, an old PostScript document from, circa 1998, these digital publishing platforms typically don't handle those situations very well. They're looking for extremely well-formed HTML5. They like InDesign. Many of them also like Quark and Corel. They kind of like PDF, but they won't give you as good a results if you try to throw PDF at them. So it's still worth doing a little bit of investigation if you're looking in this direction.
Yeah, the one other investigation point I would probably leave print search writers with that are looking at this too is that expect a different kind of costing model for the software. Yeah. They typically tend to be more subscription or transactional based instead of you buy the software outright through a license. So just kind of expect that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. It can be an eye-opening cost model.
Yeah, a bit different, right? So with that kind of rounds out our key themes for 2017 on the graphic communication side. And so let's take a look at the packaging roadmap.
Yeah, so this year, 2017, is the first year that we're really going to start talking more about packaging. And for those of you who are firmly rooted in the commercial segment and in the graphic arts segment, what I'd invite you to do is just listen a little bit and see if this is an opportunity for you. Now, for many of you, you're already taking a hard look at what the options are in packaging. Many of the hardware vendors already have offerings in this space. Some have had them for quite some time. We know we visited a packaging producer late last year that had the Xerox system in place for a number of years. I think there is this is an area that tends to be sort of undercover in a lot of ways. So we think that with digital print being more widely accepted, that the opportunities just continue to grow. And a lot of these opportunities are net new opportunities that didn't exist 5 years ago. And as I mentioned earlier, they're the result of this intersection of the growth of internet-based marketing and a lot of customized products that are in the marketplace. A lot of change in perception by local businesses about how they want to package and deliver their products, and that group of people looking for people who can provide the kinds of things they want. So there's a lot of interesting synergy that's sort of evolving through the marketplace. That demand for these personalized products. So if you look across the bottom of your screen, you'll see some images, and these are from different kinds of providers who are working, in this case, working with corrugated. And some of them are working with roll liner that's printed and then married to the corrugate and finished. In other cases, they're working with, and in that case, they call that preprint, right? And in post-print, you're actually printing on corrugated board directly, and this would be, some of your EFI machines, your Novus machines, your Cytex machines doing it. And in these cases, what they're doing is they're creating some unique products. So the bottom left is actually a corrugated mailer for a t-shirt, but the mailer itself turns into a hanger that you can hang the t-shirt with, which is kind of cool, and that can actually be personalized as a gift. The middle piece is a delivery for some bottled beauty products. They use the corrugate to actually protect the inside and to also make the delivery. But the interesting thing is that that package can be completely personalized and, in fact, even designed by the person who's buying the beauty product as a gift. The coffee delivery system that you see in the third image is actually a local coffee vendor who does deliveries in a downtown area. And one of the problems they were having is that they were using those standard styrofoam kind of or heavy paper delivery units, and it wasn't working as well for them, and they didn't feel like it was really the image they wanted. So they commissioned a local printer to create a cup delivery system for them, and this actually allows them to create something that actually even becomes a billboard. They actually change the designs and images every month on what they deliver, and they're investigating the idea of actually selling advertising on their coffee delivery carriers, which is kind of cool. And then over on the right, you see it's sort of a traditional, this one is a three-jar pack of spaghetti sauce. So there are a lot of different things that we're seeing in packaging, and there are a lot of different ideas about ways to use the packaging as more of a billboard. Now, the trick is that workflows have to change in organizations that want to adopt digital production of packaging. There's still I think a lot of room here, but again, we've seen a lot of work done in the standard print MISs that can support the things that you can do with folding carton. Those things are beginning to mature, and as especially as post-print corrugated becomes more widely known, and we see more buyers of these products, especially the personalized products, those workflows will be driven to expand pretty quickly and to mature pretty quickly. So let's look at what we think is cool for 2017. So,
you know, the only issue I see with that coffee container, though, Pat, is that's a single serving for me.
Well, I know it's a single serving for many people. I understand that. But imagine, you know, the ability to deliver, you know, you can handle a few of those, you know, you could probably carry 4 of them pretty easily, right?
Very true.
You know, but it is, I thought it was just a brilliant use of corrugated packaging, because the funny thing about packaging is that depending on what part of the business you're in, you may be thinking of packaging in a different way. So I know a lot of people think of packaging only in terms of folding carton because it's what they're used to. And it's what, you know, digitally we've been producing folding carton for a number of years. They may be, in other parts of the industry, just thinking labels because, again, we've been producing labels digitally for a number of years. And having said that, remember that labels and folding carton and corrugated packaging are still tiny percentages of the overall packaging market. The opportunity for growth in these markets, some of it is going to be analog capture, but most of the digital packaging is going to be net new opportunity based on net new product offerings driven by new marketplaces. So having said that, we see these top 6 things as what we're going to be watching in 2017, what we think you should be watching in 2017. We definitely think you need to watch the digital workflows, because customized packaging means more SKUs. And there are a number of ways to manage the explosion of SKUs that can happen in a relationship with a brand that you're doing work for. The EFI solutions, the Kiwi solutions, the EFI is the old Harry Road solution if you're familiar with it. These all have ways to manage multiple like SKUs and still manage them down to a discrete, unique level, but it's something that you definitely have to take a look at and become familiar with if you're going to be working in the packaging space. We know that overall in the marketplace, the runs for everything are reducing, and that's true whether it's book publishing, magazine printing, or box printing. And a lot of what drives the shorter runs is a just-in-time mentality that continues to grow. You would think that it was already pretty mature, but it's still moving into different businesses. And especially with regard to packaging, there is no doubt that there is a long-term goal among most packaging producers and the brands they serve to reduce the warehousing costs and the warehousing footprint, which means print and deliver is where they really want to go, and digital is perfectly suited for that. Creating retail-ready packaging and creating the retail-ready packaging experience. In the past, we've seen those big stand-up display items in the warehouse stores. You know, if you go into Costco or BJ's or Sam's, pretty much anywhere in the world, you see the stacks of display boxes selling, you know, socks and underwear, or pallet wraps that are designed to make pallet displays a little bit more attractive. All of those things are sort of getting a new look by brand owners and the designers who work with them, and the ability to produce unique retail-ready packaging that can be unique to an individual store or an individual chain of stores, or even unique to a specific store location. That's something that everybody's looking for because they need to continue to attract consumers to their products, and big white cardboard boxes simply isn't going to do it, and they know it. So it's going to become a much more interesting opportunity in the marketplace to serve that retail-ready experience. Smart packaging comes in a lot of flavors. It's everything from adding, you know, barcodes and QR codes and augmented reality to the packaging, to packaging that is actually made to fit the product specifically. So if you look at products like the CMC carton wrap that allows you to actually, you know, wrap down to the size of the package on an ad hoc basis. These kinds of packaging solutions we're going to be watching very carefully, because the workflows that drive them are a bit different, all the way back to the creative layout, all the way through the final delivery. So we'll be watching that. We're watching for all of the new packaging workflow solutions that are needed to work in both hybrid environments where both analog and digital solutions exist, all the way down to net new packaging workflows installed to support new packaging print lines serving the short run market. So there's a lot of work among all the workflow producers, and we'll be keeping an eye on that. We believe that the brands are going to tilt towards digital. In 2017, we think we're going to see more of it. We saw quite a bit of it in 2016, but we think we'll see a lot more because the quality has simply arrived. And this image that you're looking at here on the right is from an event that was done at Komori in Japan in December. It was their open house, and these are actually perfume boxes that are produced on their digital IS-29 device, and then finished with and turned into boxes with their Hicon device. And the goal that they had was to produce boxes that were retail ready off of their digital device. And they did that on behalf of a brand that wanted to do A/B testing. So they actually were able to create a whole lot of different designs and actually put them into the department stores in Japan, and then focus group them and test them and see which ones got higher reaction. So now that they know which ones work best, they'll put that same box design on their conventional press to do the final runs. But it allows them to put real product-ready packaging into stores to do testing with, and that's something we think we'll see a lot more of, and we'll see a lot more of it around the world. So those are our 6 areas. So I guess, Ryan, it's time for us to wrap it up and say where we think the world is going for 2017, and certainly for me, every vendor has the opportunity to create right-sized, optimized, data testable workflows that produce real information to real dashboards that PSPs can use to run their business, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of that in 2017.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the other kind of key takeaway I would have is that there's all these other areas that you as a printer and a vendor to support them can be getting into. So whether it's packaging, textiles, whatever. And what you really have to think about and investigate up front, much like we are with the different packaging areas this year, is that where are they different from what you know already today? So as an example, packaging is much more, from a workflow and software perspective, you've got to take a much deeper look at how to manage at a project level basis than an individual SKU basis. And also all the assets like images and graphics and so forth that would go with that kind of creative work that you're ultimately producing. So it's a bit different than if you're coming from the commercial side.
Yeah, everybody needs to put their education hat on. No matter how long you've been in the business, no matter how experienced you are in your business, if you want to move in these directions, expect to have to do some learning, because there's going to be some changes to the way you would want to run your business to be successful. And that last one, that digital publishing platforms will be extending their traction. I think that this might be the year that we really start talking about these platforms in different ways. There are a lot of opportunities, and there are a lot of interesting talk tracks around how these platforms, which are now pretty well established, can actually be used in a lot of ways they haven't been used up till now.
Yeah, and I think we'll be talking more about platforms for the different segments, different applications, but the word platform is not going away.
No, it really is not. So I guess we're at the end of our time. We're just a hair past the top of the hour, I think, and so we do want to thank everyone who took the time to dial in to hear us live, but we think nothing less of the people who are listening to us on the recorded version of the webinar. Please remember that if you've heard anything that you have a question about, Ryan.Maccabee@InfoTrends.com, Pat.McGrew@InfoTrends.com, or tweet us, or catch us on LinkedIn. We are more than delighted to answer your questions, and your questions often lead us in a direction that we need to do a little bit more digging in, and that's good for all of us. Ryan, thanks so much for being a great partner in our webinar this morning.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for joining. Until next time.
Bye.